Good evening, America. I'm Rachel Maddow, and tonight we begin with breaking news from the Eastern Front that represents one of the most significant tactical developments Ukraine has achieved in months. A development that military analysts are calling a potential game changer in the battle for the Donbass region. Ukrainian forces have successfully deployed a weapon system that Russian military planners never anticipated facing on this battlefield. A British-supplied capability that Moscow's air defense network was simply not designed to counter. Yes, you heard that right. The advanced weapon platform that the United Kingdom has been developing in secret for years. The system that was supposed to remain classified until well into the next decade has been transferred to Ukrainian forces and used in combat operations with devastating effectiveness against Russian positions that commanders believed were secure from this type of attack. This is not just another story about Western military aid or the incremental delivery of conventional weapons that has characterized much of the support Ukraine has received. This is a fundamental shift in battlefield capabilities that threatens Russian control of airspace in critical sectors and that demonstrates British willingness to provide Ukraine with some of the most advanced military technology in the Western arsenal. The weapon system in question has been described by military experts as a revolutionary approach to air defense and offensive strike operations. Something that combines multiple capabilities in ways that existing Russian countermeasures cannot effectively address. The Iron Curtain of secrecy surrounding this British weapons system was shattered when Ukrainian forces employed it against a Russian command complex located deep behind front lines in occupied Donetsk region. According to military analysts who have studied initial reports and imagery from the strike, the weapon achieved complete surprise, penetrated Russian air defense networks that were actively operating, and delivered precision effects against the target with an accuracy that suggests advanced guidance systems and real-time intelligence integration. You might want to pay close attention to this one because what's unfolding represents more than just one successful strike or even primarily about the immediate tactical consequences of destroying this particular Russian facility. It's a moment that reveals fundamental truths about the evolving nature of this conflict, about British commitment to providing Ukraine with capabilities that can genuinely alter battlefield dynamics, about Russian vulnerability to weapon systems that their military planning did not anticipate, and about the possibility that Western nations are willing to cross thresholds in military support that seemed unlikely just months ago. For weeks, military observers have been noting unusual British military transport flights arriving in Poland and Romania, observing increased activity at Ukrainian military training facilities in Western regions, and speculating about whether the United Kingdom was preparing to provide some new category of military assistance beyond the conventional systems that have been publicly announced. Now, we have the answer. And if you're finding this kind of detailed military analysis valuable, if you want to understand not just what happened with this British weapon deployment, but how it functions and what it means for the broader trajectory of the war, please hit that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications because this story is developing in real time. As Ukrainian forces integrate this new capability into their operations, and as Russian forces scramble to develop countermeasures, we need to make sure people understand that Britain's decision to provide this advanced weapon system represents both impressive military support and potential strategic shift that could reshape the balance of capabilities in critical ways. Now let's examine exactly what this British weapon system is, how it functions differently from conventional platforms Ukraine has been using, and what makes it so difficult for Russian forces to counter. Let's be clear about what we're seeing based on information provided by Ukrainian military officials. From analysis of strike footage that has been released showing the weapon's effects, from Western intelligence assessments that have been shared with select journalists, and from Russian military channels whose discussions of this new threat reveal genuine concern about how to defend against it. The British weapon system that Ukraine has deployed combines elements of drone technology, precision guidance, and advanced propulsion in a configuration that military experts describe as fundamentally different from traditional missiles or unmanned aerial vehicles. According to sources familiar with the system's capabilities, it can operate at altitudes and speeds that make detection extremely difficult, can alter its flight path in response to threats or targeting updates, and can deliver warheads with precision measured in single-digit meters against targets located dozens of kilometers from launch points. This isn't just a headline about Ukraine receiving another batch of Western military equipment, something that happens regularly as allied nations provide ongoing support. It's evidence of Britain making a deliberate decision to share technology that was classified at the highest levels, that represents years of research and development investment, and that British military planners intended to reserve for the most critical national security contingencies. The weapon systems designation remains classified, with British Ministry of Defence officials declining to confirm specific details about its capabilities or the circumstances under which it was transferred to Ukraine. However, military analysts who have studied the strike effects and the limited information that has been released have drawn conclusions about what category of weapon this represents and what makes it so significant. According to experts who have examined the evidence, the British system appears to incorporate stealth characteristics that reduce its radar signature to levels that make detection by Russian air defense networks extremely challenging. Let that sink in for a moment. We're talking about a weapon that can penetrate Russian air defense coverage that includes some of the most advanced systems in Moscow's arsenal, that can navigate complex battlefield environments where electronic warfare and jamming are constant factors, and that can deliver precision strikes against targets that Russian commanders believed were protected by distance and by defensive systems. The tactical sophistication required to employ this weapon system effectively against prepared Russian defenses represents a level of military capability that Ukraine has been developing with Western support throughout this conflict. But that reaches new dimensions when combined with advanced British technology. And here's where the operational significance becomes clear and why military analysts are paying such close attention to these developments. The Russian command complex that was struck in the first employment of this British weapon was not, say, another forward headquarters or tactical command post that might be targeted by conventional artillery or drone strikes. It was a fortified facility located more than 50 kilometers behind the front lines, surrounded by multiple layers of air defense coverage, including short-range systems designed to intercept drones and missiles, medium-range systems that provide area coverage, and electronic warfare equipment that can jam guidance systems and communications. Russian military planners had assessed this location as secure from Ukrainian strike capabilities based on its depth behind front lines and the air defense coverage that protected it. That assessment was catastrophically wrong. What makes this British weapon system truly extraordinary is not simply that it penetrated Russian air defenses, but rather the methods it employs and what those methods reveal about how Western military technology has evolved beyond what Russian countermeasures were designed to address. Think about the challenges involved in conducting a precision strike against a target located deep behind enemy lines and protected by active air defenses. The weapon must remain undetected during its approach, avoiding radar detection through stealth characteristics or flight profiles that exploit gaps in coverage. It must navigate to the target with precision despite Russian electronic warfare efforts that can jam GPS and other guidance signals. It must identify and engage the correct target, even if the battlefield environment includes decoys or if the target has been camouflaged or concealed. And it must deliver its warhead with accuracy sufficient to achieve desired effects against a potentially hardened facility. This didn't happen through luck or because Russian air defenses simply failed to engage. Multiple sources, including Russian military channels, indicate that air defense systems were active and operating normally during the strike, that radar operators were monitoring their displays for incoming threats, and that electronic warfare systems were functioning as designed. The British weapon succeeded despite these Russian efforts, demonstrating that its design characteristics overcome the defensive capabilities that Russian forces possess. The reaction from Russian military channels and official statements reveals the shock and concern that this development has triggered. Russian military bloggers, who typically maintain confident assessments about their forces' capabilities, have expressed alarm about a weapon system that can penetrate defenses they believed were robust. Official Russian military statements have acknowledged that a strike occurred but have avoided providing details about the weapon employed or the extent of damage inflicted, a pattern that typically indicates the incident is more serious than Moscow wants to admit publicly. Behind closed doors, Russian military planners are scrambling to understand this new threat and to develop countermeasures. According to Western intelligence assessments that have been shared with journalists, Russian air defense units have been ordered to modify their operating procedures, to increase alert levels, and to attempt detection of threats that their systems may not be optimized to track. Russian electronic warfare capabilities are being reoriented to attempt jamming of the guidance systems this British weapon employs, and Russian commanders are being forced to reconsider which facilities and positions are truly secure from Ukrainian strike capabilities. Now that this advanced weapon has entered the battlefield, imagine being a Russian officer responsible for protecting high-value targets behind the front lines. Having been assured by air defense specialists that multiple layers of coverage provide adequate protection, suddenly discovering that a weapon you never anticipated facing has penetrated all your defenses and struck a facility you believed was secure. Imagine the questions from superiors demanding to know why existing air defenses failed, what intelligence failures allowed this weapon to be deployed without warning, and what measures can prevent similar strikes against other critical facilities. That's not simply tactical surprise or operational setback. That's comprehensive failure of threat assessment and defensive planning that calls into question fundamental Russian assumptions about airspace control. The decision by the United Kingdom to provide this advanced weapons system to Ukraine represents a significant shift in British defense policy and raises important questions about Allied calculations regarding appropriate levels of military support. For months, Western nations have calibrated their military assistance carefully, providing capabilities that enhance Ukrainian defensive and offensive operations, while attempting to avoid escalation beyond thresholds that might trigger broader conflict. The British government under Prime Minister Keir Starmer has been among the most vocal supporters of Ukraine, consistently advocating for robust military assistance and for allowing Ukraine to strike legitimate military targets regardless of their location. The decision to transfer this particular weapon system appears to reflect British assessment that the strategic benefits of providing Ukraine with genuinely game-changing capabilities outweigh the risks that such transfers might provoke Russian escalation. According to British officials who have discussed the decision with journalists, the weapon system was provided with specific parameters regarding its employment, including restrictions on certain categories of targets and requirements for coordination with British military advisors before strikes are conducted. However, the fundamental capability has been transferred, giving Ukraine access to technology that significantly expands its strike options and that threatens Russian positions that were previously considered secure. Think about how this decision was made at the highest levels of British government. Military planners had to assess whether this weapon system could genuinely alter battlefield dynamics in ways that justify transferring classified technology. Intelligence services had to evaluate the risks that the system or its technology might be captured by Russian forces or that its capabilities might be compromised through operational employment. Political leaders had to weigh the benefits of providing enhanced capabilities against the possibility that such transfers might provoke Russian retaliation or complicate diplomatic efforts. The integration of this British weapon system into Ukrainian military operations required extensive preparation, training, and coordination between British and Ukrainian forces. According to military sources familiar with the transfer process, Ukrainian personnel received specialized training on the weapons operation, maintenance, and employment tactics at secure facilities outside Ukraine. British military advisors worked with Ukrainian commanders to develop tactics and procedures for employing the system effectively while protecting it from Russian counterstrikes or capture attempts. And operational security measures were implemented to prevent Russian intelligence from detecting the weapon's presence before it could be employed in combat. The successful first strike suggests that this integration process was effective, that Ukrainian forces have mastered the technical and tactical aspects of employing the weapon, and that operational security prevented Russian forces from anticipating this new capability. Military analysts note that effective integration of advanced weapon systems typically requires months of preparation, that failures in training or coordination often result in unsuccessful employment or loss of equipment, and that the fact Ukraine successfully employed this system on its first known combat use indicates high levels of competence in the personnel and units entrusted with the capability. What makes this particularly impressive is that Ukraine had to integrate this British system into its existing military operations, coordinating with intelligence assets to identify suitable targets, with air defense units to ensure the weapon would not be engaged by friendly forces, and with operational commanders to ensure its employment supported broader campaign objectives. The successful coordination across all these dimensions demonstrates Ukrainian military organizational capability that extends beyond simply operating individual weapon systems to conducting complex joint operations that require synchronization across multiple domains. The selection of the Russian command complex for the first strike with this British weapon was not arbitrary, but reflected careful operational planning designed to maximize both immediate tactical effects and broader strategic messaging. Military analysts who have studied the target note that it served as a coordination hub for Russian forces across a significant sector of the front, that its destruction disrupts Russian command and control capabilities in ways that will take weeks to reconstitute, and that the strike demonstrates Ukrainian ability to hold at risk facilities that Russian commanders believed were protected by depth and defensive systems. The psychological impact of this strike extends beyond the immediate operational disruption. Russian officers at other command facilities behind the front lines now understand that their positions are vulnerable to a weapon system that their air defenses cannot reliably intercept. Russian military planners must reconsider their assessment of which facilities and capabilities are secure from Ukrainian strikes. And Russian political leadership must confront the reality that Western nations are providing Ukraine with increasingly advanced capabilities that threaten Russia's ability to sustain military operations. According to Ukrainian military officials who have discussed the strike, the decision to employ this British weapon against this particular target was made at the highest levels of military command, with coordination with British advisors and with understanding that the strike would reveal the weapon's existence and capabilities to Russian forces. The calculation appears to have been that the operational benefits of striking this high-value target outweighed the costs of losing surprise regarding the weapon's existence, and that demonstrating this capability would have broader strategic effects in terms of deterring Russian operations and signaling Western commitment to Ukrainian success. The technological sophistication of this British weapon system represents years of research and development investment in areas including stealth technology, precision guidance, propulsion systems, and electronic warfare resistance. Military experts who have analyzed the limited information available about the system's capabilities note that it incorporates design features that address specific vulnerabilities of conventional missiles and drones, that it employs guidance methods that are resistant to jamming and spoofing, and that its flight characteristics make interception by existing air defense systems extremely difficult, even when the weapon is detected. The stealth characteristics appear to involve both shaping that reduces radar cross-section and materials that absorb or deflect radar energy. The guidance system apparently combines multiple methods, including GPS, inertial navigation, and potentially terrain matching or target recognition algorithms that allow the weapon to navigate accurately even if some guidance methods are jammed. The propulsion system provides speed and maneuverability that complicate interception while maintaining sufficient range to strike targets deep behind front lines. And the warhead is designed to deliver precision effects against hardened or concealed targets. This combination of capabilities creates a weapon system that is qualitatively different from the drones and missiles that have dominated Ukrainian strike operations throughout this conflict. While Ukrainian forces have achieved impressive results with modified commercial drones and with Soviet-era missiles adapted for modern warfare, those systems have limitations in range, payload, accuracy, or survivability that constrain their effectiveness against certain categories of targets. The British weapon system addresses many of these limitations, providing Ukraine with a capability that can hold at-risk targets that were previously beyond reach or too well defended to strike effectively. The introduction of this British weapon system into the Ukraine conflict has implications that extend far beyond the immediate tactical success of the first strike. It represents a threshold crossing in Western military support, demonstrating willingness to provide advanced capabilities that were previously considered too sensitive to transfer. It alters the risk calculus for Russian military operations, forcing commanders to account for a new category of threat when positioning forces and facilities, and it potentially opens the door to additional transfers of advanced Western military technology as nations reassess what capabilities they are willing to provide. For Ukraine, this weapon system provides options for conducting strikes against high-value targets that were previously difficult or operable to engage. Russian command facilities, logistics hubs, air defense nodes, and other critical military infrastructure located behind front lines now face genuine threat from a weapon that can penetrate defensive coverage and deliver precision effects. This capability supports Ukrainian operational planning by holding at risk the systems and facilities that enable Russian military operations, potentially disrupting logistics, command and control, and force concentration in ways that create opportunities for Ukrainian forces. For Russia, this development creates serious challenges that will require substantial resources to address. Air defense networks that were designed to counter existing threats must be modified or supplemented to attempt detection and interception of this new weapon type. Force disposition decisions must account for increased vulnerability of facilities and positions located behind front lines. And operational planning must consider how to sustain military operations when critical nodes and capabilities face persistent strike threat from a weapon that existing defenses struggle to counter. The broader strategic message concerns Western resolve and commitment to Ukrainian success. The decision by the United Kingdom to provide this advanced weapon system signals that at least some Western nations are willing to escalate their military support beyond the careful calibration that has characterized aid packages throughout much of this conflict. Other Western nations will be watching to see whether this British decision triggers Russian retaliation or escalation, and depending on Moscow's response, may reconsider their own policies regarding what capabilities they are willing to provide Ukraine. In the wake of Ukraine deploying this advanced British weapon system and achieving successful strikes against targets Russian commanders believed were secure, the story that emerges is about technological advantage, about British willingness to provide classified capabilities to support Ukrainian operations, about Russian vulnerability to threats they did not anticipate, and about possibilities that the military balance may shift in ways that alter operational dynamics. The deployment of this British weapon represents one development in the much longer story of this war. An important development that reveals capabilities and commitments, but that must be understood as part of a broader campaign whose ultimate outcome remains uncertain.